Hi, I'm Eric Ostro. Live at the Lortel is about to start. For Season 2, While Theaters Are Dark, we are discussing with our guests their thoughts on the reckoning the theater community is facing for systemic racism and their vision for the future of the American theater. To broaden our perspective, I am sharing my platform with co-hosts from the BIPOC community. We offer these conversations to help us learn and to start the healing process. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Live at the Lortel. I'm so happy that you're here. We're going to get right to our show. Let me welcome my co-host for the evening, my dear friend, John Andrew Morrison. John, get on in here.
Well, hello, Eric. I'm very excited to talk with Krysta today. I'm a big fan.
Me as well. We have so many things to talk to her about. So let's just get right to it. Let's welcome our esteemed guest for this evening, Krysta Rodriguez. Welcome.
Hi, how you doing?
Thank you so much. We're so honored that you're here.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
We're both very big fans. We both might fangirl out a bit. So
just a touch.
Yeah.
I did see In the Heights like 6 times, and I saw you.
Oh,
in
yeah?
several different roles. Yeah.
Oh, fun. That's exciting.
We're going to get to it. So let's just go. How are you? How have you been since our world has turned upside down over the past, 10, 11 months of our lives? Where were you? How are you?
I mean, I'm good. I am as lucky as a person can be during this time. I'm safe and I'm with family. I was actually in the middle of filming a TV show when everything shut down. And it kind of was like the day before we shut down, we were all in this big group scene that took place in a plane. And there was like 60 of us shoved in this small space. And then we started getting all the calls like, oh, Law and Order shutting down, Blue Bloods is shutting down. We were like, I guess. And the next day they shut us down and they said, we'll be back in 2 weeks. And then, 6 months later, but we actually did get to finish the show. So I was quarantined in New York for a long time, came to LA to be with my parents, and then got the call that the TV show was going to finish. And there's all these wonderful protocols in place now. I felt very safe being able to work on TV, which is a relief, and I hope is something that we can keep doing and employing people with. And then came back to California. And so I'm good.
Well, that we're talking about it. The TV show that you're talking about is something I'm so excited to hear about. It's Ryan Murphy's producing a series called Halston.
Yeah.
And you are playing a legend in itself. So you are playing. Go ahead. You talk about it, please.
Oh, I'm playing Liza Minnelli, which is just a complete and utter joy and privilege and terrifying experience all wrapped into one. I got the audition. This was now back in November of, last 2019. And I saw the headline, like the subject line. And then I saw Liza Minnelli and my heart started beating so fast. I thought I was going to get sick. And my third thought was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And then my second thought was like, I think I have to do this. I think I have to get this. And I texted my agent and I was like, I think I have to get this. My heart's beating so fast. I think I'm going to throw up. And he's like, that sounds pretty good. That sounds like a good sign. I'm like, okay. And it just, every step of the way was just absolutely, I could not compute that would happen. And then it did. And, I think actors can relate to this, that sometimes you get a job and your first thought is like, oh, what do I have to cancel now? Or what wedding can't I go to? Or, the kind of okay, what does this mean for my life? And sometimes it can be kind of complicated to get a job, or, oh, I guess I got this, that means I can't do this, or whatever. And this was one of those rare moments that was just pure, utter joy. I couldn't believe it. So it was an amazing and really lucky and blessed experience for sure.
Have you ever met Liza?
I have not. Well, actually, that's not true. She came to see Spring Awakening, the first one. So almost 15 years ago. And she was very sweet and very complimentary, but I was the swing. I was, in the back. So I can't even recall if I actually shook her hand. I just remember her telling us to enunciate. She was giving us notes to enunciate. But Ewan McGregor, who's playing Halston, he got to meet her because she and Halston were best friends, lifelong, thick as thieves friends. And they have a beautiful relationship where they sort of converge together to become who they are to us. He was sort of a hat maker at Bergdorf's and she was Judy Garland's daughter. And then when they found each other, his costumes became iconic and her sort of being the face of his label was iconic, and the two of them formed these personas together. It's a beautiful friendship that they have. And so he got to meet her and she was really supportive of the project and happy that her friend was in good hands. And so that was nice to hear.
What's your way, or what was your way into finding your Liza?
Well, fortunately, she has so much to draw from. I mean, she's a legend because she's been around and has such a breadth of work. So what was exciting to me is that we began meeting her in the show when she's 19. So it's this sort of really pure version of her that wanted to be an actress and really took her acting seriously, which wasn't always necessary in that day and age. Especially her mother was a famous singer and she has this unbelievable voice. She really approached work and her acting in a way that is as sophisticated as any person would be doing it now at 19 years old. And that was really inspiring to me. So I just surrounded myself with her work entirely. I had our choreographer for the show, Susie Meisner, who is a Broadway gal and also did Fosse Verdon and Chicago and a bunch of other things. She and I worked together on movement work, which I spoke to a lot of people who have played famous people. And one of the good pieces of advice that I got is that, for instance, I did a television show with John Lithgow, so I'm just going to drop a little name there. So I called John and I was like, what did you do? Because he did such an amazing job being Winston Churchill. And he said, as long as you have enough that puts the audience at ease that you are going to take care of the person that they love, you don't have to mimic them. You can have the essence of them. So, I first started freaking out about doing her dialect, or the way she moves her mouth properly, and the way sort of she says things and how she sings. But I found that the easier way in was how she moved, because the thing that people say about her all the time was that she had simultaneously this thing that you wanted to just sweep her up and hug her, and then she would show you she didn't need you. Like she was a survivor on her own. And as I sort of tried to find the places in my life that I feel are similar, which are many, it became much easier to sort of find her sensibilities. And then, my God, you put the hair and makeup and the eyelashes on and it's game over. It is like a crazy experience. It was thrilling for that reason.
Yeah, what was that moment like when they put the hair and makeup and the lashes and you looked in the mirror and...
Yeah, what's crazy about it is this thing, and I would have never thought about it. I had been cast, and then we were in rehearsals and everything, and we do what's called hair and makeup tests, where they put you in the full thing and they film you doing activities and stuff so they can make sure that it works, and they put you with the other characters or whatever. So I'm here in the hair and makeup test, and it looks great, and the director comes up to me and goes, "You don't have brown eyes." And I said, "I know that." He was like, I can't believe I never noticed. You don't have brown eyes. And I was like, yeah. So they got me color contacts. So I was fitted for color contacts. And when I popped the brown eyes in, that I couldn't believe how different it made me look. And to the point where at the end of the day, when I would take them out, if I still had the stuff on, people would be like, "Oh my God, those are your eyes. I haven't seen your eyes." So it was remarkable because she just has these unbelievable eyes. They are just lagoons of emotion and you just want to swim in them. So it was really important to get that detail meticulous, which was exciting because I love that.
Yeah. Sean, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, me? I'm sorry.
But I'm ready to go again.
Go. I was just lost in the conversation. I mean, I have two things that I want to add, because I know I'm switching to theater, but like you started off doing, you were a swing and you did ensemble work. And I think people in the audience, especially young actors, would be curious to hear, like, what have you learned doing, being a swing and like having that work ethic, being in the ensemble, especially a swing, I have such a high respect for people who have that skill set. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like because I started theater at an early age, I guess, quite frankly, I was a little late. I was like 13 and I started doing children's theater where I was growing up. And then I did basically moved to New York, and then I was on Broadway pretty quickly after that. So I didn't have the pay your dues at the summer stock or whatever. So I had to go from being in school where things are very disciplined and just go, okay, I'm going to take that to when I'm working. And, there was nothing in me necessarily that said this girl can be a swing. I just happened to be young, and I think they thought I could fit into a couple parts, and I wasn't going to slack on that at all. And my first show was Good Vibrations, which was a learning experience for many reasons, as I'm sure you can imagine. And when you're in something like that, where they're just throwing anything at the wall and seeing what sticks, it's important for you to stay on your own path and just do your own work, because, things are flying all around you. And so I just found it really soothing to be in the work. And I had some great people in the show who had done it before, who were able to kind of give me some hints. And thank goodness, because I made my Broadway debut on our second preview. Somebody got sick at dinner, and I had 30 minutes to get ready to go on. So I didn't have any, there was no one in the audience. There was nobody that I knew. We held the curtain. It was like, I didn't have costumes. They just flung me on stage. So that was my introduction to theater. So I'm actually glad that happened, because I swung a couple other times. And I think when you're young, you just think, you can do anything. I mean, I went to an arts high school. We were working until midnight. We'd go to school at 6 a.m. We were taking AP classes, and then you're doing the, Music Man at night, and you get home at midnight, you turn around again. So I think being sort of young and having my mind in that way, where you just juggle everything, you just do. I think that was a gift for me. And then because I went on with no warning and I knew what could happen, when I swung or understudied after that, I was always ready to go. And I never had a rehearsal. I swung, I did 9 roles in Good Vibrations, 5 roles in Spring Awakening, and 4 roles in the Heights. And I went on for all of them, having never had a rehearsal for any of them.
Oy.
So you just, because you have rehearsal well into when you're open. And I went on in previews for every show that I ever swung. In Spring Awakening, I went on in tech. So there was just never a part where you felt like you could be like, oh, that was a one-off and I'll just relax this time. You just have to do it.
So you literally got pushed on stage that time, right? I was reading about that story. I was reading another interview that you did, and they held the curtain for 30 minutes, right? And then it was only like 5 minutes.
It was. I found out at half hour. I came in from dinner, and they were like, "Who covers Janet?" And I was like, "Me." They're like, "You're on." I said, "Today?" They're like, "No, next week." Yes, today. Like, I didn't even know what a swing was when I was hired. I remember being at rehearsal on the first rehearsal and them handing out vocal parts and me not getting one and being like, oh, like I don't even have my own thing in this. I learn everybody else's. Like I had never done anything like that. And I feel for the people who have that experience, because it's common for you to be a young person and be swinging. So I feel very, I feel very close to my understudies and fellow swings and stuff. And if I ever have an understudy, I take the time to like show them how to do all the little grab it this way, not this way, and all those sorts of things. Because I always feel like it only serves me if my understudy is prepared. Why wouldn't you, want that to be ready to go? So I always tried to be that for somebody, and I now try to be that for somebody who's understudying.
Which I find so fascinating too, because 2006 you were a swing in Spring Awakening, and then you came back to the show, years later.
Many years later.
I'd love to hear about a little bit about the experience of the first time, and then coming back to a role that you had understudied.
Yeah.
And so please.
I can say that that show is one of the most special things that's ever happened to me. And the fact that it happened to me twice, I could have nothing else good happen to me for the rest of my life, and that will suffice. It was such a special experience. I had sort of a harrowing experience doing Good Vibrations and swinging. And I went back to school, and I actually saw Spring Awakening off Broadway at the Atlantic. And at that point, they had already announced they were going to Broadway. And so I left the show, just another moment, same as like the Liza thing, just like shaking and just being like, this is mine. I have to have this. And I said, I called my mom and I said, there's this show and it's going to Broadway and they need swings. And I know I said I would never swing again, but I would mop the floor in the theater if they would just let me be near this production. Mm-hmm. And she's like, okay, honey. I was like, no. Like, everybody out of my way. And it actually was like, I'll spare all the details, but I, at the time, was 21, turning 22, and they said I was too old. So they wouldn't even let me audition for it. So I had to like jump through hoops. I went to an open call. I couldn't get seen. I finally, like, the casting director had pity on me and gave me an audition, and then I got the job. So it was like definitely one of those situations where I just knew it was mine and no one could tell me differently. And so I think I came into that experience knowing how special this was, knowing how wrong a show can go, knowing how lucky you are to be in something you just will, stand by to the end. And so I was just really grateful to be there. And I covered Ilsa, which is the role that I loved from when I saw it in off Broadway. And that was just a win in and of itself. And in fact, that was the role I went on in Tech. Lauren got the flu during Tech. And so it happened to be the day they were teching her like only scene. And so they were like, we can throw lines at you from the audience. I was like, I don't need lines. Like, I am ready to go. Like, you don't even understand. And one thing about being a swing, and I've mentioned this before, is like, one of the issues about it is that you're like this much right for every part, but the person who's playing it is 100% right for that part. And so sometimes it feels like you're wearing a coat of nails. You're just like, oh, like this song's not for me, and these shoes aren't for me. And then there's Ilsa, which felt like a warm sweater, is what I always said. Like, when I found out I was going on for Ilsa, I could just like sink and enjoy. And it was so lovely. And I think it was so special because it was so rare at 22 and at 15, which some of the other kids were, to have roles that had this much stakes. I mean, it's so rare to have so much to draw from. And I always felt like that was so cool, that she was such a complicated woman character that you don't find at that age. And so I just loved it. And the show changed my life. And anytime anyone ever said, like, what's your favorite role, I would always say Ilsa. But that one was crazy because I was an onstage swing. So I was in the show every night. And that would happen sometimes where I'd be sitting in my audience chair before I was revealing myself to be part of the show. And I would get this little tap on the shoulder and I would have to get up and go, and there'd be like, so-and-so sprained her ankle in the first number. Like, and I would run upstairs, put a costume on, and come on for my first entrance. And the cast didn't even know because they're on stage the whole time too. And the audience has watched an audience member get up, go backstage, put on a costume and walk on stage. So like boot camp as far as a swing, for sure. There was you could never think that you were going to be. One time I went on in the last 10 minutes of the show. You're just like, you just never know. And so anyway, so that was like crazy and amazing. And so then fast forward almost 10 years, I get this call that they're doing it for Deaf West, which when I was doing the show on Broadway, I remember thinking, oh, someone's going to want to revive this and it's going to be terrible. I remember like, oh, they're going to set it in some like insane asylum or everyone's going to like have shaved heads or something. And I was like not looking forward to the revival at the time in 2006. And then when I had heard that Michael Arden had an idea for it with Deaf West, I was like, it's the only way. It just was like, that is the perfect combination. And so I was a fan. I donated to their Kickstarter to do it in Intercity Arts. I was so supportive of it from the sidelines because I was 30. I would never thought when I was 22 and too old that I would play it again at 30. And then they called and said, do you want to play Ilsa? And I was like, and it was going to be for the 2-week run at the Wallace Theater in Beverly Hills. There was no mention of a Broadway run or anything. And so Michael was just stacking it with people who had either done Spring Awakening or knew sign language because we only had 2 weeks of rehearsal and there was no way you could teach someone both because it was just a transfer of the same production that they had done. And so he stacked it with me and with Andy Mantis, his husband, and our friend Alex Wise and our other friend Alex Waniello, all these people who are like way too old but have done the show before and would love to like get the gang back together. Turns out it goes to Broadway and I'm playing Ilsa again. I'm like, this is like if you told me I got to play Annie or something. Like this is like a dream that had been long forgotten. And it was an extraordinary experience, not only because I was pushing myself in ways that I never thought that I would. This was way harder than even when I did it back then, not to mention the fact that I was like going through chemo at the time when we were rehearsing it. So it was like learn a language and do a show and chemo and all of this other stuff. And I just think that I thought I knew Ilsa when I was 22 and I knew the 22-year-old's knowledge of Ilsa. The 31-year-old's knowledge of Ilsa was so satisfying and so exciting to dive into and to bring all the life that I had. And I just think nobody should play their age. You got to be 15 years older to understand these things now. It was so unbelievable. And I'm so grateful for that. And then just as like a little thing, I kind of got to do the same thing again because I did Chorus Line when I was 23 and then got to do it at the Hollywood Bowl when I was 30. And like, again, I am obsessed with playing roles that you're just too old for. I'm obsessed with it. I'm so happy to have done it.
Well, I mean, luckily for you, I mean, you look very young.
Thank you.
Yes, you do. I mean, very good lighting as well. Okay. But you know, when you go back to the role, I mean, you had so much, you would live so much life in those 9 or 10 years between the show and going to chemo and just living life. But when you go on as an understudy or a swing, you were going on for Lauren, right? Yeah. But now you have the opportunity to create this role yourself.
Yeah.
And learn sign language. And what were you able to bring now to the role that you didn't then?
Well, I think that what was exciting about the Spring Awakening the first time, and everyone was so age appropriate, it was really exciting to hear kids tell their stories. But I think with Ilsa in particular, she is a kid, but she is not a kid. She's lived a harrowing life. And the people who can play Ilsa the way that she pops, as far as I'm concerned, is like ones who can still maintain this survivorship in the face of all of this hell that she is in. And that these kids are in the midst of it and they're struggling, and she is going to just drive through it no matter what. And there is a deep pain and sadness and like an accumulation of grief, but she presents in the world as like a free spirit. And I think it's something that very rarely as a child, you can understand what it's like to armor yourself throughout your years and know what you should present to somebody, but know actually what's going on underneath. I think, for Ilsa, it was ether and a Bacchus lifestyle, and for us, it's therapy. It's like understanding where all these things come from, and she's just sort of plowing through life. And so I think that was really something I hadn't really been able to immerse myself in. And then the other sort of gift that the Deaf West production gave is the gift of sign language, which is a different language. It's not a one-for-one English word-for-word translation. It needs its own sentence structure. It has its own vocabulary. And, it's a surefire way to have subtext. You are literally speaking two things at the same time. So while my mouth is saying something, my hands might be saying something else. And it's a gift to be able to, it's hard, it's this sometimes. And I was one of the only characters in the show that did what they call SimCom. So where I did speak and sign at the same time. But the more, people give you text and they say, keep digging, and the good texts can handle it. And the bad texts sort of unravel like a sweater. And when you've got a great text and a beautiful theoretical conceptual language that you can also dig into, you're just treasures untold.
Wow. And you have so much chutzpah and you've gone through so much, and there's still a lightness about how you interact in the world, just talking with you. And you've said something a couple times, it is for me. It is for me. And I'm curious to know more about that knowing, that intuition that sometimes actors get when they get a part or they see a part and they're like, oh, no, this is mine. And I'd love to just hear you talk about that. It is for me.
Yeah, I think there are definitely times when I'll get a part that I'm surprised. I'm like, wow, somebody thinks I can do this, In fact, one of the greatest gifts that ever set me on a path was when I was doing children's theater and I was called back for Cinderella and I was cast as a stepsister. And it was I was a coloratura soprano when I was 13, I was like, somebody saw that I could be goofy or throw myself out there or be funny. And that was a gift that I would have never, if it was all up to me to choose what I would have done, I'd be playing, very different parts. But to have somebody tell you, you can do this and support you in it is a gift. So there are definitely times when you don't think it's going to be for you. Someone's going to be better at this. But there are definitely times, and this happens to me a lot, when I will get a call, I'll get an audition, I'll be like, oh my God, so-and-so would be so much better for this. And I'll be like, hey, are you going in for this? Because I'm going to give it my best shot, but you're going to walk in and they're going to see you, And so that does happen. But there are certain things, First Date was like this a lot too. And so was Addams Family, where First Date especially, Addams Family had to work really hard to get that part, and for a number of reasons. But with First Date, and this sounds terrible, but I encourage especially young women to have this mentality, is like, oh, they're going to be so happy when I come in. They're going to be so grateful that I walk in and they can go home after me.
It's done. Right.
I'm going to give them the gift of casting this show. Because you're just like, oh, I get this. And you hear yourself saying the lines and you feel yourself walking through that character and you just go, it's actually this beautiful sense of relief where you're like, someone gets me. They're going to be so thrilled. And we're going to put on a great show together.
You've solved their problem.
I solved the problem. You're welcome. And then there have been times when I've been like, you're welcome, I'm here. And they're like, oh, thanks. So it doesn't always work.
Balance.
I'll tell you, I've made some calls to play Sally Bowles and nobody is biting on it, which I don't understand. So maybe now that I'm Liza, people will let me play Sally.
Now you'll have it. Now you'll get it.
But no, it's just this like, sometimes it strikes you. And I always tell this anecdote, which is, the Chorus Line documentary, Every Little Step, when you watch them trying to cast Paul, and they have these guys coming and doing the monologue, and you're like, that guy's amazing. And then the next guy comes in and you're like, that guy's amazing. And then the next guy comes in and you're like, how are they going to pick? And then Jason Tam comes in. Yeah. And it's just Jason Tam. It just is. And to see that from that side, and I've been behind the table a couple times, it's such a weight off your shoulders to be like, sometimes you're not Jason Tam. Yeah. Sometimes you're just not that. And I cast a show. I went back to my high school and directed a show a few years ago.
Chorus Line, right?
Yeah, Chorus Line. Chorus Line has intercepted in my life many ways. And I'll tell you, that was not one that I thought was me and only me. I thought they were crazy for even calling me in for that. And it has intercepted my life so many times. But I remember not casting somebody and her asking me what she did wrong. And it was it had been so long since I had thought I had done something wrong, which is why I didn't get a part. Because when you're going on 1,000 auditions a day, right? But when you're in high school and there's 2 shows that year and you don't get one of them, the stakes are so high. And I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, they still think there's something wrong with them. And one of the greatest advices I ever got was, it's math. It's just literal math. There's 1,700 of you in one part. And sometimes you're not Jason Tam. And that's just nothing you can do about it. You'll be someone else's Jason Tam. And that's all you can do.
That's going to be my mantra.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're not Jason Tam.
You're just not Jason Tam. We're going to put that as a tagline for this podcast. I want to remind our audience to ask questions. And I do have a question that from Abby. I'm going to wait a couple of minutes because I want to get to your relationship with Teresa Rebeck. And I saw Seared, and I worked in restaurants for many, many years. And that show hit me really hard. Just the BS and the mishigas. We're using a lot of Jewish words today. And of working in a restaurant. And I recognized you and the chef and the whole cast. You talk a little bit about that show that played at MCC. It was brilliant. I loved it.
That's so nice. Thank you. We love this show. I got to do it at Williamstown about 1.5 years before we did it at MCC. And gosh, another one of those just impossible tasks, which is like cook meals live on stage.
Right on stage.
Right on timing and cues and with lighting calls and all that. And there's been a few guys who have played that character, Harry, the chef, and they have all risen to the occasion in extraordinary ways. But yeah, I love the show. I think it is what Teresa does so well is that she creates worlds that are not, she rarely writes about the theater. She's not really writing about actors or, any of that, but she brings this universal feeling to many different occupations. Like I did a show, What We're Up Against, which is about architects. And the whole show was about, air ducts. And then now we're in the Seared, which is the kitchen, and it's all about the scallops. She understands these universal themes and they seem to relate to art in a beautiful way. And what Seared did was really relate to this war versus art and commerce, which is you can make a beautiful scallop, but if nobody comes to the restaurant, what's the point? And if you're a temperamental chef who believes that, your art is for art's sake and also have some self-destructive tendencies, you're not going to want to create the same scallops over and over and over again, as if we do when we're doing a show 8 times a week or whatever. And then there's somebody who comes in and says, I can give you everything you want if you just do your job, instead of being sort of a, temperamental loose cannon. Now, what's really great about Teresa's shows is she always lets the girls play as dirty as the boys. And that is why I love being a Teresa Rebeck girl. And the people are complicated. What I find fascinating is sometimes I don't think the audience takes that extra step and sees what the misogyny in the relationship is, because my character would come out and have really a lot of the right answers, but they immediately relate to this kind of all over the place, self-destructive, maniacal white man who just wants to like have a God complex. Yet they villainize the woman all the time. And it's fascinating. It's happened to me in every show that I've been in. And people, oh my God, you were such a bitch. I'm like, well, what did I do? Tell me, what did I do? Did I double the profits of the restaurant? Did I ever lie? Did I ever say that, And they're like, oh, I guess so. And I even had an interviewer once be like, I loved your character and I knew she was going to be bossy as soon as she came on stage. And I said, oh, why is that? And he's like, well, she's wearing heels. And I said, well, let's unpack that for a minute.
Interesting.
Business, it's, to me, so easy to relate to a Teresa woman because she is doing her damnedest to exist in a world of misbehaving men and choosing every avenue. Do I misbehave as well? Do I put on a smile? Do I flirt? Do I just take it? It's like they get to try every tactic to try to keep up with everybody. And it's interesting, sometimes the audience relates to it and sometimes they don't. But they almost always relate to the bad man. And I just think it's fascinating.
Yeah, Raul is incredible, and he was unbelievable in that role. Yeah. And you fall in love with the SOB. But I thought you were brilliant in that show, and I think I don't think you come out like the bitch. I think you did exactly. You met everybody. That's what I love about Teresa's Place too. The men and the women they meet right here.
Yeah, and I love going toe to toe. In fact, recently, Teresa got the four of us together to do a Christmas Carol. We did like an online version of Christmas Carol, and Raul played Scrooge, and I was the ghost of Christmas Present. And she was like, "I love this dynamic you guys have, where you're kind of going toe to toe with him." And I'm like, "It's you, Teresa." That's the holdover from Seared. I am like locked horns with Raul Esparza, where I want to be for the rest of my life. It's so fun.
I'd like that too, by the way. I would love to lock horns with him. Yeah, I think he's an incredible actor and amazing to watch.
Can we go to Hercules?
Yeah.
There's something about that Public Works that I love from the very first one that they did, and I so loved Hercules and being in the audience, and when you were about to sing your song, the three women in front of me lost their minds, and there's just the spirit of that whole Public Works, I think is beautiful. Yeah. And I'd love to just hear about your experience getting to do that and something so special in terms of the Public Works.
Yeah. It was really special. I have loved that role. I've loved that movie forever. Susan Egan, who voiced it in the film, is actually a mentor of mine. We went to the same high school, and she's been mentoring me since I was a child. And so I've always looked up to her, and she always said, if they ever did Hercules, you should play Meg. And so that was always a fun prospect, but that was not sort of in the back of anyone's mind. And I think Hercules was one of the less, profiteering shows for Disney. It was a great show and the music was amazing, but it wasn't one of the heavy hitters that people think about. And so I think the team really was like, well, no one really wants to see Hercules. And so they gave it to, they allowed the Public Works to get creative with it in a way that maybe they, if it were a big Broadway production right away, I would have to sort of stay truer to the movie. And I think that what was great about Public Works was they were able to make it really relevant to today. And I think, casting Jelani was a huge, huge step in what they wanted to say with the show, which is this idea of what happens when you're seen as an outsider, you're seen as a threat when you are not, when you are really a hero, and what it means to be a hero to people. And we sort of were able to inject a lot of social aspects of it, that a hero doesn't save you from monsters. It can, create income and income equality and sort of serve other people. And it was just sort of a beautiful way that they wanted to do that. And even Lear DeBesnay, who directed it, she had a mind for social justice. That's where Public Works came from. And it's really exciting to be able to infuse the community, people who have been incarcerated, people who are veterans, people who just have different experiences in their lives that can come together and do art. And it was really exciting to be able to do that with this property. Public Works always does that, but what was something we didn't expect was for people to lose their minds over Hercules. Like, I don't think anybody really thought. It was just like people have been waiting for this forever, and no one was really talking about it. So when it came out, everyone was like, yeah! And so that was really exciting. And so what's great at Public Works show, normally you're seeing a brand new original piece, and you're like, oh, this is so exciting. When people hear the chords of Zero to Hero, they're just like, and that was so fun. And I think it was fun for the people in the show. But so anyway, basically how it happened was I just got asked to do a workshop, and Jelani and I just hit it off immediately. And I loved being a part of the process, and I loved the new stuff they were creating for Meg. And I thought that I could bring something interesting to it, a bit more of like, just the show has changed in 20 plus years. The role has changed. And Lear had brought up stuff about how, Meg is trapped in the underworld because she signed her life away for a man who didn't love her. Mm-hmm. And this is sort of dark, but it just to bring light to the issues we were trying to bring to the show, is that a large percentage of women who are incarcerated are because they're taking the fall for a partner, a romantic partner, or a father. And that's something where she said, I want to feel like I can see Meg in New York City. I don't need a Greek character. That's why we didn't have the toga. We didn't have the hair. I want to feel like I know this girl has become a boss. She was imprisoned by this man, and somehow has found herself to be the highest of echelon in his company, basically. So what does it take to rise out of your status and be in charge? And what does that mean for you? And what type of person does that create? And that was really exciting to do for a Disney character,
Yeah, you brought it. I mean, and you brought the house down. I mean, I never felt the public kind of shake that way. I don't know if you could feel that from the stage.
Yes.
The response and the people around us. I mean, it was like a rock concert.
Yeah, and people just clamoring to get in. And
oh my God!
Hundreds of people at the Lotto nuts. It was crazy. So fun.
Absolutely. Somebody would offer an organ for one of the tickets. They were that hot.
Yeah, the people were trying to pay.
Yeah. I have some questions from the audience. Abby, hi Krysta. I'm super excited to see Halston. Hi Abby. Is there an expected time frame for its release? And what did you find the most exciting part about filming it?
I think there is an expected time, of which I am not at liberty to say, but I believe it will be, I think it will be coming somewhat soon. That's the goal, at least. And what was the last thing? A memorable thing about filming?
Yeah, what was the most exciting part about filming?
Honestly, I think being I'm just a nerd for costumes and for history, and to have something that I could easily reference. There's just so much of them. There's so much Studio 54, iconic images. There's so many things. And, if I'm going to dress up for Halloween, I'm going to get the perfect thing. Like, I'm not going to buy a green shirt. I'm going to get the green shirt. I'm going to sew on the right, blah, blah, blah. Like, I am meticulous about that stuff. And when you meet people who are as excited and actually talented at it, not me, like sewing buttons on a thing, it's so fun. And to just pour over photos and be like, okay, let's make sure this in this area, she was wearing her hair like this and she had her makeup like that. And we would do things where, like if I was doing my performance look, my makeup artist she'd put the foundation stuff on and then let me put the makeup on, because she's like, Liza was a theater performer. She would slap on her own makeup and it would like feel natural. So really like living inside another person who you respect and learning about her. She is, I mean, I loved her before. You can't not love Liza Minnelli. You can't be a woman in theater and not know, or think you know about her. But living in her and respecting her in a way, I just think she is the most extraordinary person on the planet. And she's unmatched, and I can't describe that, but just like getting to spend time with her in my mind and in my body was extraordinary.
Yeah, you don't have to tell us, two gay men. I can't imagine what it was like to like slip your legs into those pantsuits and those hats are just unbelievable. I cannot wait. I mean, there are a couple of images online that you can see.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a couple.
Well, also as a gay man, I mean, Ewan McGregor. I mean, come on.
Believe me.
Come on.
It was not hard to follow.
That's a whole nother podcast, John.
I would have like I have an acting coach, and I had my dialect coach, and they'd be just like, whatever, just look at Ewan. Just whatever he does, just look at him. That's just gonna be fine. I was like, you're right. Sweetest guy, such a joy. And we had a great time developing their friendship, and it was so fun. Like if I was performing a number, I perform a couple numbers in the show, and he would be in the audience or whatever. He'd yell like, Liza, like as I was getting ready to start the take. we really went all in on these people. And you always want to treat your characters like they're real people, but when they really are, it's a joy to like, listen, there were some fashion missteps. Let's not, let's not sugarcoat it. But I'm going to step into that outfit and feel amazing because I'm her, feeling amazing when she did that. It's not, you don't get to be like, oh, can we? And I don't feel like yourself is completely out of the equation, and you get to completely serve someone else. And that's, it's a relief, honestly.
Oh, I can't wait. I want to talk a little bit about chemo couture.
Yeah.
So it's no secret that, you were diagnosed with breast cancer right before you did Spring Awakening. And I'd love to talk about chemo couture and how helpful it has been to many, many people. And I want to talk a little bit about it.
Yeah. It really came from this place of really not knowing what to do. And there is something about getting a diagnosis like that where you feel like, well, I have to do something. I have to change the world somehow. I've been given a challenge to overcome, and I have to do something with it. And I don't know why that is, and I can't say it, but I can say that there are many people who have gone through it who find themselves needing to do something else for other people. And I think a lot of that is because I had a favorable diagnosis. It was advanced stage, and it was scary, but it was something that there's been enough research to really hit it properly. And that's only because people have been open about their experiences. And so it really came out of this feeling of like, I don't really know what to do. And then the other part of it was that I wasn't going to be able to work. In my mind, doing chemo meant I wasn't going to be able to work that year. And I had done a couple treatments before where we were trying to avoid chemo, and I worked through all of those. But then when we found out I had to do chemo, I thought, well, now I have to tell people, because I hadn't told anybody. I didn't want to be a liability. As an actor, you're always like, I don't want to give them a reason to not want me or to be complicated in any way. And I had gotten cast in a movie, which I had to do because I needed health insurance. But I didn't tell anybody that this was happening because I didn't want them to be afraid to cast me. So when it came time to them being like, okay, actually you have to do chemo, and we were heading to pilot season, which was, basically at that time, the only time you could get a job if you wanted to be on TV. I thought, well, I should figure out a way to like let people know what's going on so that I didn't just disappear from the face of the earth, that I can tell people, what I've been going through. And one of the things that was helping me so much was kind of adorning myself, was costuming myself, was becoming different personalities at different times. I was like, I'm going to Samantha Jones myself through this chemo, and order a bunch of wigs and whatever. And then honestly, the name just sort of popped into my head. And it was like, when the name happened, I was like, well, now I have to do it. What a cute name. Like, I got to do it.
Yeah.
And one of the side effects was insomnia of the chemo. And I was just up one night and I was like, I just want to get my thoughts out. And I sent it to a couple people and they said, I think this could be really great. And so I worked on it, put it together, and really, again, like thought, this is just going to be sort of my live journal so people know where I'm at and they're going to see some fun photos of me and maybe I can help some people or whatever. And I had no clue the market that it would hit. But I did feel, I guess I should have had some clue, because I did feel like my age group is a very underrepresented aspect of women going through breast cancer. Normally you're past menopause or you're in your, you've had children, you've been married. And so I felt like there isn't a lot for women my age who have a lot of hopefully life left to, there's a lot of aftermath of cancer. And if the goal is only to survive, you end up with some things afterwards that are not helpful for you moving forward. And so I felt like I was in a unique position where I could fight for people who can't fight. And maybe if I could bring awareness to younger people who are getting cancer, I could move the needle for the older women. Because just because you're 50 or 60 or you've been married or whatever doesn't mean you don't want the best reconstructive surgery you can, because you hear the word cancer and you go, just take it out, just get it out. And they're doing the same surgery they've done for 40 years. And other people are sort of pioneering new techniques. And if you've heard of them, you can ask for them. And if you haven't, you're going to get thrown out the other side with a body you don't recognize. And there is no help for you after that. There are definitely, support groups and places that you can join and you meet people when you're going through it. But medically, you're on your own for the rest of your life. And so I just really felt like once I saw it, people grabbing onto it, and I heard that more people were going through it. I guess, when it happens to you, you think, I am quite possibly the only 30-year-old woman who has ever had breast cancer. And then you hear from other people, and then they were giving me advice and I was giving them advice, and this thing taking off, and people still reference it. They say, my mom got diagnosed. She went on your site. I give tips and health and wellness, and I spoke to a number of other publications. I wrote for Cosmo for a long time. I wrote for Time Magazine. I did a piece in Lenny Letter. I tried to just be really loud, and that was not in my nature. I was somewhat reserved and private about a lot of personal life things. And it just felt like the louder I can talk, the more people know the information. And so I just went for it.
Thank God.
I think it's so wonderful that you used your platform in that way, and like talk about getting loud. I mean, I'm really inspired just like listening to you talk, because there is this lightness about you, but like you've gone through some stuff, and I'm very impressed about you using your platform in that way. And how did it inform your work after? Also? Oh my God.
Well, this was the punchline of the whole thing is I worked more in that year than I did the year before. I was, when I came out with the blog, this show called Chasing Life, which is about young women having cancer, wrote a series arc for me in their second season. So I got to perform on the TV show bald and like completely who I was at that moment. They worked their filming schedule around my chemo schedule. I would go do fake chemo on set and then real chemo the next day. And I, once I figured out that I could work and people were accepting me, I thought I was going to shirk away and like live in a cave and nobody would want to see me. And what an ogre I would be to this very superficial business that I'm in. And people went, oh, we love this. We love you. We love like what you can bring to things. And I don't necessarily know that Michael Arden would have thought of me for Ilsa had I not been going through what I was going through at that exact moment. And it was, it was very like eerily timed. I finished chemo. I started rehearsals. We closed the show. I had my surgery the next day. We got picked up to go to New York. I moved to New York. I started radiation on the first rehearsal and finished radiation on our first preview. Like that show carried me through this experience. So I can't help but bring what I'm going through to what's going on.
And to have the opportunity to work on Ilsa with it. I mean,
and to have a group of people that were excited to see this warts and all version of me, which was liberating. Just like people who were fostering that idea and excited to see what I could bring to it because of what I've gone through. And I think that's, you just think the ugly parts of you are going to get shunned. And when they get embraced, it's a freedom you can't like describe. So I think that gave me more courage. And in the situation, it's like leading me to be able to do Teresa's work and leading me to be able to do women. I think people saw me in a way that felt like, oh, she can handle this now. And that I'm really grateful for. And I mean, I saw somebody years later that was like, hadn't seen me since, and it was like 5 years later. And they're like, I just feel like you're a different person. And I don't really notice it, but I think what it did was give me obviously more to draw from, but I think because it was met so positively by so many people, it gave me courage and to pursue those things. Because I could still like, sometimes if things are too traumatic, you can buckle under the weight of that. But the army of people that supported me really brought me closer to what I wanted.
I have a couple more questions from the audience. Nancy asks, thank you, Nancy, because I was going to ask this. I was a fan of Smash. Could you talk about that experience a little bit, as we're running out of time, unfortunately, bringing musical theater to the TV audience?
Yeah, I was a fan of the show in the first season. And so I had moved to LA and I was going to get a TV show and then nothing was happening. And so I moved back to New York because my sublet had moved out. And then a week later I got smashed. I had to like quit theater and move to LA to get a television show about theater in New York. But it was a great experience because it was a nice transition. It was like, okay, I know how to do this. It's similar to like Spring Awakening. It's like, okay, I know Ilsa, let me learn sign language. It's like, I know theater, let me learn TV. And, Josh Safran, who was the showrunner of that, who's since become one of my closest and dearest friends, he was the one who really cultivated this group of Andy and Jeremy and I, who were this new group of people. So not only was I new, but there were other new people, and we felt we felt a kindred spirit, and now the three of us are, ride or dies till the end. And that made that such a special experience, not to mention the people I already knew on the show who I had done shows with and cared for and worked with and loved. So it was just a really, it was a gentle transition and also like a crazy show. And the fact that people love it now is great, but it was wild when it was happening.
What a phenomenon that people stopping you on the street. I mean,
Oh yeah, this is one of my favorite stories. Like I got first date right after the show was still finishing up. There was like a couple episodes, and I had kind of convinced Zach Levi to come do the show on Broadway. I knew they had offered it to him, and I had met him once in an audition, and I called someone to get his email and was like, "You should do this show. Broadway needs you." And so he was like, had never done it before. He'd obviously done theater and stuff, but and so it was really fun because he was like this TV star, and now I'm like the veteran, like Broadway gal. And we were walking down the street, and we hear this like pam, 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 like feet running, and these teenage girls come swarming, and they're like, "Oh my God, Krysta! Oh my God, we love Smash and we love Adam's Family." And Zach is like, "Who are you?" Like, he has no idea. And I'm like, I go, "Honey," and this is what I said to him. I said, between 41st and 54th Street, I am the most famous person in the world right now. It's this 2-week period where like Smash is on the air and I'm in a Broadway show and like the teenage girls are like graduating. I am so, and he was like, oh, you know, it was just such a shock for like a TV star to be like, there's a theater fandom here that I'm like, you know, these teenage girls aren't for you, Zach. They're for me.
They pushed them out of the way. One final one from Diana Henry. In addition to Sally Bowles, what other roles are you dying to dive into?
I think I want to play Ava Perón. I had an audition for it, and it had never dawned on me. It was never a dream role for me, but I had an audition for it a couple years ago, and they basically made me do 13 pages of the material, like the whole show. And it was one of those things where I was like, I don't think I understood it then, and I think I understand it now, and I think I could do it. And I didn't get the part, but it is something now where I'm like, well, that's fine. Nobody has the part now.
Okay. So, so maybe it'll come back.
Yeah, no. Somebody did get it, and I haven't. But I did a piece of it about it in my 54 Below show. If it's called the Bay Vita medley, you should check it out on YouTube.
I saw it.
Yeah.
I've done a deep dive into your life.
Yeah. So that was that
I know a lot. I've seen it. I loved it.
Yeah.
It was excellent. You should have gotten it.
Thanks. Yeah. So I think it'd be fun to play her now that I, that'll throw that one my way, I hope.
Well, Krysta Rodriguez, it has been, I think, the fastest hour that we've had on here.
I told you I would talk a lot.
No, I mean, we welcome guests like that. I mean, you really brought yourself, and what John said is you have this incredible light about you with everything that you've gone through, and I'm so excited to see what is next. I can't wait to see Halston. I can't wait to see your Liza. We're all very excited for everything you do. We're very big fans. So I'd like to thank our wonderful guest, Krysta Rodriguez. Thank you all. Thank you to our guests. Thank you, John. That's our show. Next Monday, February 8th at 7 p.m., Joy and I will interview New York City drag artist Marty Cummings. We'll talk about his nightclub act, TV appearances, and his political career. And on Monday, February 15th at 7 p.m., John Andrew and I will interview the incredible Michael Potts. Who just starred alongside Viola Davis and Chadwick Boseman in August Wilson's Ma Rainey's Black Bottom on Netflix. I also would like to remind everyone to watch the first episode of our new digital series, Consequences. It is only available through this Sunday. Visit lortel.org to watch. Thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed the show, please like the video, subscribe, and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. That's a lot to say, but we will see everybody this week. I thank you so much to our audience, and really, Krysta Rodriguez, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was really an honor to have you here. You're a joy. So thank you so much.
Thanks for keeping this up. We all need it. Thank you.
Yeah. Good night, everybody. Have a great night. We'll see you next week.
Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye, Mom.